Okay, so there's a few of you in the room, so we can make this more conversational, but quick show of hands in here. This will be much less effective with some of you in the room who don't actually do corporate security. How many of you feel good about your data at the edge, or at your the data in your data center? Yeah, medium good? How do you feel about it at the edge? Less good? Better? Worse? Like I see a couple like less good. Noah's nodding. So what I want to talk about today is typically that gap. The gap between, when you think about your data center as being well managed, highly secured, very high performing, there's a team of people who are responsible for it, versus the edge. And when I say the edge, I'm not just talking about edge devices, I'm talking about contractors, agencies, commercial teams, even marketing teams that are out in the field doing work, conferences like you just saw. And the thesis that I want to talk about today is a very simple belief that the edge doesn't have to be an exception to your enterprise infrastructure. In fact, it should be considered part of that infrastructure. So quick introduction to who we are, or who I am and who I'm representing. I work at a company called Iodyne. Some of you in the room have definitely heard of us, some of you have not. We build enterprise-grade storage systems for environments where traditional IT tools stop working. We started really in the media and entertainment world for video because that's where the edge risk is really most visible and most costly. You think about Disney movies or Marvel or Amazon, Netflix stuff. But that belief is carried over to a lot of different verticals, and the core belief is really simple, that the edge is not an exception to the enterprise policy. It should be part of that. And enterprise security should not stop at the edge of your parking lot, which you can see up there. We say that a lot because it really shouldn't, and it often does. And we believe that it shouldn't be a workaround, that it should be part of your inherent system. And so again, think about the difference between inside the HQ and what happens at the edge, right? Like beautiful, pristine. I know that not every data center looks like this, and not every server room looks like that. But I use that to emphasize the point of the variability that you see at the edge. And so what you end up with is product launches, marketing videos, board meetings, corporate events. They all exist at the edge. It's all happening at the edge, and that is where a lot of your IP first exists. It's not that your most sensitive IP lives there. Your sensitive IP eventually gets moved to your HQ, but it's that a lot of that newly created and highly sensitive data is created at the edge. It starts there, and typically it enters your system before any kind of controls fully apply. And if you think about how easy it is for somebody to undermine security just by turning that security off, right? If you're thinking about a commercial team that's working with just a simple hard drive, and you tell them that they have to use software encryption, and they just decide, well, you're not on site with us, and we just turn that off. It's very easy for them to turn it off at any point in time. IT gets held accountable, but they're functionally blind. They don't have that control because they're not on set with them. And this isn't chaos because people don't care, right? Like the people who are doing the work at the edge care tremendously about it. And it's not a failure of policy. The IT people care a lot about the IP that's being created at the edge. It's that you just don't have a unified control system that exists today that can sit across all of this. So you have different drives, different teams, different handoffs, and it ends up being a failure of tooling, really. So this is my beautiful abstract. This is lovely, right? Like if you ever played old baseball games on Nintendo and you had to pick a team, or even a soccer team, you always had one of these, right? Where it shows you might be fast, but your team is very, your team is not good at kicking. The same thing exists when you think about the choices that are made at the edge. Security, usability, and performance are three of the key characteristics of what people are looking for in drives at the edge. But often things get pulled in different directions. So IT teams will set a policy with the right intent, but if that approved tool slows down the person who's using it, they will probably find a workaround because the pressure of a deadline or the pressure of a delivery just forces them to adapt. So the shape that most organizations are forced into at the edge looks something like this. There's always a trade-off. You get two if you're lucky, right? So you might get security and usability. In this case, your performance is the red dot. You can clearly see that it's straining. But then what happens is, controls get bypassed. So over time, teams learn where the system bends, and because there is not really oversight in the field, people just do what they want to do, and it becomes reactive and stressful and political, right? Like it's not just a simple, I use this drive. It's, okay, they want me to do X, Y, and Z. I need to at least satisfy this requirement. And now you have fighting because the tools are not satisfying the needs of the people who are deploying them and who are receiving them. And that's the failure of the system. So the rogue IT that exists at the edge isn't a rebellion. It's not like people are trying to mess with IT people. I know, in speaking last year to a lot of IT people here, that the feeling was like, man, the creatives just drive me crazy. You know, they use whatever drives they want and they send it back to me. There's no encryption on it. They're not doing that to make you feel crazy. And I'm sure that some people in the room might see some head nods, which is great. That's not the deal. The deal is that they just don't have the system in place or the tools in place to be able to actually do this. And for a long time, I think, you know, I used to work at G another hard drive company. I think for a long time, this has been the case, and this has just become accepted because that's how it goes, right? There hasn't really been a set of tools, and you have to make these choices. And I guess the lunch and wow point, if you could see where I'm going with this, is that you actually don't have to make this choice, right? If you think about where, as a company, Iodyne is coming from, our ethos and our thinking, right? There are tools now that exist that allow you to do the things that you need to do and actually hit the requirements for the IT and the InfoSec teams, have that manageability and trackability that typically is being asked for, looked for, and have security, performance, and usability, right? So what typically shows up as these trade-offs and day-to-day symptoms of the IT requirements, the question is whether or not the system is designed to work together or not. So we take it from a different perspective of not just looking at the criteria, but looking at who's setting that criteria. So you have the real world workflows, which is obviously the people who are doing this, who need to deliver the work, create the work, shoot the video, edit the video, and then deliver it. Your performance and reliability that I think is ubiquitous. Everybody wants that, right? Like nobody wants to take a drive out into the field with the expectation or the fear in the back of their mind that it's going to fail. And creating multiple redundancies is the best practice, but sometimes creating multiple redundancies is not feasible. And then last but not least, I would say this is kind of the base of the pyramid, is enterprise IT and InfoSec requirements, especially when we're talking about corporate video, right? There are real ramifications of that IP getting out. If you're talking about a board meeting, you're talking about a new product campaign, right? Like there are legal ramifications, there are financial implications. And so you cannot ignore this, and you cannot afford to have people at the edge using whatever they want because you are not providing them with the right tool set. And so when you can actually harmonize these three pieces, when the edge starts to behave like infrastructure and you're and you actually have the various stakeholders accounted for, control becomes more invisible, and all that politicking and all that stress and all that, let's say maybe not so pleasant enforcement, it stops competing, and now you have the ability to actually go do the work with a consistent setup rather than each time is ad hoc, each time is something new. So I'm not going to talk too much about our products. I know Lunch and Wow, I'm supposed to give you the whole hoorah, but I think what's more important is for you to understand what our ethos is and to think about whether or not that is in alignment with what you're trying to do. So what we've tried to do in order to create Edge as infrastructure is to create a single unified system that sits across multiple different products. So you got the Pro data, which is about the size of a laptop. Multiple users can plug into it at the same time. Great for your on-location stuff, great for multicam, great for single cam. You can literally do an entire workflow head to tail on this thing, fully encrypted, 256-bit AES, but it's not the kind of encryption that makes you crazy and feel like it is in my way. The Pro Mini is the smaller version of that, 4 and 8 terabytes. So the Pro data does up to 192. The Pro Mini is 4 and 8 terabytes. This is a mobile portable drive. It is the first drive that is using solid-state cooling. Again, thinking about that consistent performance, security that you can't turn off. And then finally, what sits behind all of this is a fleet management system that allows you to deploy multiple drives in the field, check device telemetry, device health, control access, set things like lost labels or lock labels. If somebody is a contractor and they do the work and they're done, you can use the fleet management system to effectively remove that person from access. So it's all of your controls, and you can see a little map there. We have a Find My system in some of the drives. All of those controls then sit underneath. IT can now control, manage, track, secure the way that they want to. End users have tools that can fit whatever the workflow is and whatever the environment is. And you end up practically with devices that are workflows and devices that are more consistent, more uniform, outcomes are much better, stress is less, time saved, all the rainbows and puppies and all that good stuff that lots of people love. So that's what Iodyne is all about. Yeah. If you lose the Pro Mini, you have a few different options. One, there's a Find My tracker inside of the Pro Mini. So if you've registered your Pro Mini for Find My, you can literally use Apple or Google's Find My systems, and you can track that device directly. We also have it set up that there's a loss mode. So the label that you see on the front, that is a persistent label. It will last for up to 5 years without the drive ever being plugged in. So assume you lose the drive, somebody goes and takes it and plugs it in their computer and tries to unlock it. As soon as that IP gets logged, that label will change. You can set that drive to a loss mode, and it will dynamically change the label. That you can be friendly and nice and say, hey, this drive belongs to Ken, or this drive belongs to Mike. Please call me or email me to get it back to me. Or you could be a little bit more Liam Neeson about it and say, I know where you are. I know you have my drive. Come give it to me, or I will find you. So there are some things that you can do to prevent loss. And obviously, when we talk about redundancy, that's another part of when I think about loss, I don't just think about physically losing. I think about a drive goes down, you lose your data. Pro data is 12 NVMe drives inside. RAID 6, obviously you have redundancy built into that. That's a form of it. We still tell you back it up. Please back up all of your data. These things will fail. The Pro Mini is different than most of the portable SSDs on the market in that it's not a single M2 stick inside of an enclosure. It's actually a chip stack, and it's a Reed-Solomon encoding, but it's effectively like a RAID 6 inside of it. So you have redundancy built in, you have over-provisioning built in, so that when the cells eventually burn out, which they do in SSDs, you're not holding the bag thinking like, I have nothing. It's one of the first drives that you can actually deploy into the field that has built-in redundancy. I wanted to flash this. So if you want to learn more, we have a table in the main lunch area. We've got all the products. You can pick them up and play with them. Obviously, one of the big things that we do is a lot of workflow design and just a workflow testing, because everybody is doing something different. We do that all the time. We like doing that. We learn a lot. So if you want to check any of these things out, you can come to the table. I'll flash my info up at the end here. That's the inside of the Pro data. Think about it in the field. User serviceable, rebuilds the RAID set if anything fails, which is really lovely, because who wants to rebuild a RAID in the field? Who has time for that? Pro Mini, again, I'll let you guys see this in a minute. What I wanted to show you is these two. When I think about the corporate environment, one of the things that we've learned over time is this constant fluid motion of data. It is being moved from one place to another. And this actually, this came out of post-production in post-production in film and television, is this idea that I need something to move data very quickly. I need it to be secured, and I need to be able to trust that when it gets to the endpoint, they can plug this thing in and offload it, and I can start working, whatever that work happens to be. And so this is just kind of an idea of practically what it means when you have something that is sustained throughput and encrypted, and you can make that handoff from one place to the other. Whatever it is that you're handing off, and you need to move that data, you can start seeing some time. There's a significant differential in moving 48 terabytes in 160 minutes versus 48 hours on some of the slower drives, or realistically like 12 to 14. Think about what that does for your team, what that does for the output that you're trying to create, and how much better that feels at the end of the day, and obviously cost savings, because we all work at companies. And then this slide is also the last one I see. I'm in the last minute here. Again, thinking about practically what we're talking about here. Practically, when you start to have a system in place and you start to think about the edges infrastructure and you have consistency, you don't have this like, well, they're using the OWC, they're using the LaCie, they're using a Samsung T7, all great drives for different purposes. But now when you bring that uniformity and you bring that control and you bring that consistency, now you can think about, okay, cool, I can predict that it will take me about an hour and 10 minutes to move 10 terabytes of data, to ingest 10 terabytes of data. And then what does that look like from a cost savings perspective? Well, if you're a small, 1 to 3 person team doing interviews on site at a board meeting, that's $300 a day in time just waiting for data to be ingested and waiting for data to be copied. Or if you're in a bigger commercial team, that's $900 a day. And if you're a commercial production team, that adds up really quickly, especially because your next job is your next source of revenue. And then finally, if you think about some of these larger scale event teams, corporate teams have, a lot of big corporations, especially in tech, have big conferences, big retreats, and a lot of them have brought some of that in-house. And if you're talking about a 12 camera or a 4 camera event, and you've got 10 people working on it or 8 people working on it, that's almost $2,000 a day of just the savings from time. Forget about all the other things that you can do. That is just saving time, ingesting and copying data. So I'm Mike Gitig. We're over here, yeah?
So you mentioned the freelancers and some users out there. Obviously, they don't want to have to bring in new software, so they have to get a big involved with fleet management software.
No. As an end user, you could be completely oblivious to the fact that it's fleet managed at all. Like the only way that you're interacting with that is that you have some form of authentication. So depending on the organization, they might want to do tap to unlock. So the Pro Mini has an NFC chip on it. So you could use your phone, tap it to unlock. Or if you're on the Pro Data side, you might need a password or you might need to authenticate in using your credentials. But that's as much as you're going to see of it. There isn't this requirement that, it actually intentionally took all the admin out of the mobile app because we didn't want the end user to be encumbered by it. Because if you put it all in one, the end user thinks like, oh, I have to understand all this. And that's not pleasant. That's not fun for anyone.
Any questions?
So the fleet management is mostly for your drives or any other edge devices?
So it's a good question. It's built for our drives, but you could take an NFC sticker and put it on any device you wanted to and use our fleet management. Now, the difference is you're not going to get any device telemetry. You're obviously not going to be able to do the Find My. So there's a fair limit to what you can do using our fleet management. And if you're looking for simply fleet management or inventory management, happy to chat and I can give you some names of companies that are really focused on that space. But yeah, you could ostensibly put anything into our fleet management system. And then we also integrate with some of those companies that do literally inventory management or asset management for corporates.
Plans to co-develop or license your kind of underlying technology to some of the other popular drives? The first one was on like a Keypro drive.
We work really well with Keypro. So it's a great question. The short answer is no, not to license, but we do a tremendous amount of workflow optimization. Like if you go to our website, we have an entire section of just literally workflow designs based on key pieces of hardware and software that our end users and customers and our partners have asked about. So we actually do have a workflow with Keypros where we show like a multi-Keypro ingest workflow, just because again, everyone's workflow is different. So we try to kind of centralize. We work directly with them to figure out where can we optimize this without any technological development. Like what can we do as two companies who know our products really well and know our customers' workflows really well, just to help educate them and make this easier. And then if we get to the end of that and a lot of people are using it and they're saying, hey, if you took this one step further, we would be really gangbusters. Then we start having those technical integration conversations. But we typically, we get a lot done in that first, and we have one sheets that support it, so you understand the use case, the limitations of that use case. Like we're all about that transparency and all about that education, and we even have a marketing term we call throughput, which like in any given workflow, we don't give you inflated or BS numbers, right? Like all this is with encryption turned on, and you just plug the drive in, you go. It's not like you've optimized your system, you haven't had to do it. This is the number, we always try to tell you the number, and if we see something different, we'll update this, or we'll look at your system to see what might be going on. So in the Keypro workflow, right, like we basically iron out, this is the base, and then usually what'll happen is if it doesn't conform to your personal or what you're trying to do, you send us an email. Martin, who's over at the table right now, gets involved. We draw the whole thing out. You tell us that, hey, that's where it's different. We optimize, we test in-house, and then you go. And we do loaners with all the usual suspects on the resale side because you need to have hands on them. It's like hard drives for so long at the edge have been so sort of consumer driven and utility driven that I think a lot of people distrust when we try to explain that we're doing something. So we like to put these in people's hands before they buy, let them try it. I mean, obviously, if you want to buy them today, great. My VP of sales is over there. His name is Robert Stacy. We'll be happy to take your order. But more often than not, it's you got to test drive this stuff. It doesn't always work right away because you have that tension from earlier. I mean, if we go back to that, this guy over here, right? You have that in the background, and so you have to resolve some of that tension. You have to figure out how are you going to harmonize what you're trying to do with the other people who are part of that, and then we build the workflow.
So duplicates, if you have only one unit and How quickly can you?
Well, so the duplicate just depends on the target drive that you're copying to. Like we will tell people all the time, if you buy second Pro Data, you're going to have obviously the fastest copy. If you have two Pro Datas, you could literally copy an entire Pro Data. Actually, it's this slide here. You can copy over 48 terabytes in bulk in 160 minutes on site. Yeah, at one computer, plug it in Thunderbolt, you're done. But sometimes you don't have the budget for that, and so reusing your spinning disk, if you have large capacity spinning disk, I highly advocate for that, right? Like use what you have. You know, if you're in a situation where you really need to be on and off quickly, get a second Pro Data. But if you have a little bit of time, your 48 terabyte or 96 terabyte RAID array, your 8-bay RAID array is probably going to do 1,000 or 1,200 megs per second. Like that's about average. Maybe peak at 15, but it'll average out about 1,200. Like that's good speed to move data. And so use that as your backup. But we certainly, even with the redundancy built in, you will never hear me tell somebody, oh yeah, save it once, you're going to be fine with the redundancy. RAID 6 is not a backup. RAID 6 is redundancy. You guys have heard that 1,000 times. But yeah, I mean, like it's always, the bottleneck on the copy is almost always going to be the destination drive rather than the Pro Data. Unless you have something that is like 10,000 megs per second, which that exists.
Can you record to multiple disks at the same time from the camera?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that the Pro Data works is you have 12 sticks of NVMe in there. It's a RAID 6 pool, and you can break that up into 15 specific volumes, which basically looks like 15 different hard drives. And those hard drives can then be set up in RAID 0 or RAID 6. So RAID 0 if you're doing caching, you need something really quick. RAID 6 if you want to have a little bit more redundancy built in there. We have tons of workflow designs that are multicam workflow designs that are either direct tether to the camera and directly writing to the storage. So it literally never writes to your machine. It only writes to the storage. So we have a lot with Red and Blackmagic. Or you can do things like, you can do multi-camera through Softron or, movie recorder, things like that. So it's pick your flavor. We can, at the end of the day, it's just really fast and secure storage. I think the difference in terms of those kinds of workflows is that we test those workflows, we identify what potential bottlenecks there are, and then we'll tell you, hey, this is what you can expect. You can do this many cameras at 4K, 60 frames per second, right? Like if you went and plugged 16 Red cameras in and you did 8K at 60, you're probably up at the edge of what the Pro Data can record in real time. You probably need a second Pro Data. But we give that guidance. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, you want to write directly, you have multicam or multiple writes, or you want to write to multiple drives at the same time, you can do that, and then we can tell you how to do that. Like if your goal is not multiple writes on the same device, you want multiple writes on multiple devices, I would say you have Shotput Pro or Yoyada or name your NLE. They have multiple pieces of software that are really good at splitting it, doing the checksum, writing the data, and then validating the data on multiple devices simultaneously, and you can automate that whole process.